Nobody expected Wildcard to become one of the biggest threats of the EWC 2026, but after defeating two of the strongest teams in the world, they made everybody to pay attention. Coming into the tournament, Wildcard wasn't just an underdog team hoping for a miracle run. They were the NAL Stage 1 champions. They had already proven that they were the best team in North America. But the big question was always gonna be, could they do it internationally? Because after years of struggling to make mark on the biggest stage, Wildcard were finally getting another opportunity to prove themselves. And so far, the EWC has done just that. They beat Team Liquid Alienware, which is basically the roster that won back-to-back majors and the 6th Invitational in 2024, and then followed it up by beating another top-tier team, Team Falcons, 2-0. Suddenly, Wildcard went from a team people respected to one of the biggest threats left in the competition. And the biggest reason for that is simple. This team is playing with confidence. The first player you have to talk about is Bay. Bay has been the best player of this tournament so far, by far. That sounds a little weird. By the time I upload this video, the stats may change a little bit because there are literally games being played right now, but he currently sits at the top of the tournament ratings ranking, while also being one of the best players in KD, cost, and clutches. And his performance versus Falcons was his best so far. He dropped 23 kills versus Falcons in one map. He played a huge role in helping Wildcard complete one of the biggest moments of their run so far. But the scary thing about Wildcard is that this isn't supposed to be a one-man carry story, because while Bay is literally the best player of the tournament, Adrian and Kenzen have been putting up great numbers too. Talking about Adrian, his story is completely different from the rest of the roster. Experience. Alright, hear me out. What do I mean from experience? Before joining Wildcard, Adrian had already experienced what it takes to win the EWC. He was a part of Team Secret's EWC 2025 championship run, and in fact, he was named the MVP of the tournament. So this is not a team full of players who are hoping that they're ready for the moment. They have players who exactly know what the pressure feels like. Of course, there are still some questions. Spiker and Baby Shark have not been performing at the same level as some of their teammates so far. It's fair, if you have someone dropping 23 kills on a map, like, how many players are there to kill? There's probably not going to be enough food for the other hunters to catch, but Baby Shark has not been like Canadian. He has had okay performances, but if they really want to win this tournament, Baby Shark and Spiker need to just bring the intensity level a little higher. So for Wildcard, the question is, can they still become champions if Bay suddenly stops dropping 20 kills per map? Because eventually, every great team will face an opponent trying to shut down their star player. But one thing Wildcard have already shown is that they do not panic. Take their match versus Falcons for an example. On Fortress, Falcons had a very early lead on the map, being up 4-0. And they were even sitting on match point for the majority of the game. In these situations, most of the teams panic, they start forcing plays, they just try to force playing aggressively, and for the most part, those fail. But Wildcard didn't panic. They stayed composed, fought their way back into the game, and completed the comeback. This is one of the biggest reasons why this team feels like a legitimate championship contender. Because winning a tournament isn't just about having talented players. It's about surviving when things aren't going your way. And talking about Wildcard winning this tournament, another thing that makes them dangerous is that they have already proven that they can beat the teams that they are going to be eventually playing in this tournament. They have beaten DZ recently multiple times in the NAL, including both group stage and the playoff matches. They defeated Furia and Falcons in a best-of-3 series at the 6th Invitational 2026, and now at the EWC, they have already taken down Team Liquid Alienware and Falcons again. And obviously it's true that if you have beaten this team like 8 months ago, you're gonna beat them now again. Of course, Siege doesn't work like that. But what I mean by bringing up these previous results is that they have already proven that they can beat these teams. It's not gonna be that they're gonna forget how to breathe when they're playing a bigger name. They can't put their shit back together. And you may ask, what about FaZe Clan? That might be the #1 contender, right? Here's the thing about FaZe Clan. They just play Siege just to make us our grand finals. That's all they do. Winning majors like EWC, other thing is not really their thing, bro. Come on. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if FaZe Clan won this whole thing. Wildcard have a very talented and balanced team with Kenzen, Bay, Spiker, and Baby Shark, including Adrian's championship experience from EWC 2025. This roster has already proven that they can make deep runs in tournaments. At the Reload 2025, they reached the semifinals before losing to CAG. At the Munich Major, they lost at the lower bracket semifinals versus M80. At the 6th Invitational 2026, they were sent to the lower bracket by FaZe Clan and then eliminated in the lower bracket quarterfinals by Team Secret. And at the Salt Lake City Major, they were eliminated by DZ at the quarterfinals. Not noticing the pattern? At literally every international tournament that this roster played, they were either eliminated by the eventual champs or the runner-ups, and sometimes even both, meaning this roster is not going down easy. But does this automatically mean that Wildcard is gonna win the entire tournament? Maybe they win the whole tournament. which I believe they'll do. But maybe they don't. But one thing is already clear. Wildcard are no longer a team hoping for an upset. They are the team everyone else has to prepare for.